I think I can get started here now. So quick introductions. I'll introduce myself. I'm Aram, the CEO of Crowdlinker. I'm the co-host for today's webinar. I'm here today with Clemence Wassen, one of our product managers, and she'll be walking you through today how to do a product-led growth discovery for your business. So really excited to go through that content with you today. Just a quick background on Crowdlinker. We're a digital product studio based out of Toronto and Barcelona. We work mostly with high growth and venture-backed startups and large enterprises to build out digital products and sophisticated marketing solutions. So just a quick few housekeeping items before we get started. So obviously this webinar is going to be recorded. Everybody who is a registered attendee will be getting a copy of this recording along with the deck that we'll be going through today. There will also be a dedicated QA section towards the end, but feel free to start already putting in your questions into the Q&A component in this webinar, so that I can start curating them. Yeah, so without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Clem, and she'll start her screen share, and we can get started. Over to you, Clem.
Perfect, awesome. Thank you, Ram, for the intro. So yeah, obviously, I will be doing today's webinar on product-led growth. I'll do a quick intro on myself, and then we'll go over what PLG is and why it's important. And we'll go through the PLG discovery process. So looking at targeting the right users, stakeholder interviews, product teardowns, competitive analyses, and then looking at some success metrics as well before doing a Q&A. So obviously, my name is Kimos. I'm a product manager at Crowdlinker. And my career path has taken me through building different products for different industries and target markets, both B2B and B2C. I've worked with very, very different users in mind, from IT directors at global real estate firms such as JLL, epidemiologists for the BC Provincial Health Services Association, to real estate agents and just regular folks going about our day-to-day like you and I. And so by building products for these different target users and having such a cross-functional role, whether it was as a business analyst, as a delivery manager, or as a product manager, I began to really understand the importance of product-led growth without knowing that there is an actual term for it from pretty early on. I love looking at things from an intersectional point of view and using systems thinking to break down problems. So it's only natural that I ended up where I am today talking to you about product-led growth. At Crowdlinker, I've led quite a few product discovery cycles, working with different types of clients to examine their products and strategy through a product-led growth lens. And so today I'll be sharing my approach on how I do so, as well as answering some of the questions shared with me from a couple of you ahead of this webinar. So thank you if you did that. Just to kind of lay some foundations, this webinar is not a step-by-step playbook on how to create the best PLG strategy out there. It's really about how to take a good, hard, honest look at your current products, practices, and strategy from a PLG lens. This webinar is going to help you lay the foundations and create the first building blocks for you to achieve product-led growth, whether or not you already have a PLG strategy in place or you're looking to create one. Obviously you're here, so you want to learn about why PLG is important. So what I'd like you to do is reflect on the following questions. Number one is, are the number of users you can audit restricted because you have to handle them with a member of your team, whether it's a salesperson, an onboarding person, etc. Number two is, are your users fully completing your sign-up processes and becoming paid users? Number three is, how soon after your users sign up does their usage drop? And does it ever go back up? Number four is, are your users leaving after paying their first invoice? Are you losing users at that point? And number five is, has your cost of acquisition been rising over the past couple of years, quarters, et cetera? And are you looking to do something about it? So a study led in 2002 showed that 50% of B2B technology companies now have a PLG strategy in place. The same study showed that 57% of those who don't have a PLG strategy in place planned on deploying one in 2022. But the key takeaway from this study was that 91% of companies plan to increase their investment in PLG. And why is that? It's because PLG has been proven time and time again to increase lifetime value, reduce your cost of acquisition, and act as a revenue multiplier for many, many SaaS companies. So what is product-led growth? The textbook definition is on the slide. It's really, when it comes down to it, a business methodology where user acquisition, expansion, conversion, and retention are all driven by the product itself. It creates company-wide alignment across teams, from engineering to sales and marketing, and it creates that alignment around the product as the largest source of sustainable, scalable business growth. It's a bit of a convoluted, definition. Long story short, product-led growth happens when potential customers can learn enough about your products and onboard themselves without having to go through human touch points. The rationale behind PLG, as most of you must know, is that if you create an amazing product with a killer user experience, low friction, and tangible benefits, not only will your customers flock to it, they will continue to use it and they will tell their friends and coworkers about it. So this might be a bit repetitive, but I really want to drive this home, is that product-led growth happens at the intersection of marketing, user education, user experience, platform, product, and design. Since there are so many areas that can have a positive or negative impact on PLG, whenever you do a discovery or you look at your processes or your methodologies, you need to look at it holistically and remain curious and objective throughout your entire discovery process. So is PLG right for you? We've gone over why more and more companies are doing it and what it is, but the sanity check is essential as well. So if the following applies to your company, whether you have a really complex B2B sales cycle, high-touch services, whether the majority of your products or services are legacy with limited upsell potential, if you work within a really heavily regulated industry with strict compliance requirements, healthcare, legal, etc., or if you're a brand with a really strong physical presence first, then there might be other opportunities for growth that you can tackle before turning to product-led growth, whether we talk about sales-led growth, marketing-led growth, or founder-led growth. These, 5 categories on the slides, they're general guidelines. Each company should still evaluate your own specific business cases before determining if PLG is the right fit for you. So I'd still recommend going through some of the exercises that I'll be sharing to see if there are any opportunities to improve efficiencies or reduce friction at certain touch points, whether your users or your clients. So before we get into the meat of this presentation and talk about discovery, I did want to talk quickly about some PLG leaders. So on this screen, you've got Slack, HubSpot, Figma, Notion, Intercom, Jira. These are companies that hopefully everyone's heard about before, everyone uses them. But what do they have in common? The first thing is that they've built their customer base through excellent user experience, and through word of mouth referrals, as opposed to relying only on traditional sales and marketing methods. The second thing is that they offer user-friendly products that deliver value to customers, which leads to increasing adoption and retention. As a result, leads to organic growth. But one of the questions that you might ask yourself is, how do they prioritize their customers' experiences and get users to have lightning fast aha moments, which I'll go over in a bit. What they've done is they've made use of the following, among with many other PLG best practices, but they've used freemium models, in-app messaging and communication tools for their users to interact with their support teams, comprehensive onboarding experiences. And they've managed to really just grow organically by making the user experience so good that people can't help but bring their colleagues or coworkers or friends or family in to use these products. So before I get into discovery, something I want to cover is the moment to value, the aha moment. It's something I'll be referring to throughout the rest of this webinar. And one thing I want to say, it's called the aha moment, but it's less of a moment, more of a cyclical value path, as you can see on the graph. So there's 3 kind of categories of moments to value. The first one is moment of value perception. And this happens when a user first visualizes a product in the context of their situation This usually happens before signing up. I'm going to use Slack as an example because if we don't use Slack, you probably use Teams or something like that. But we all know this kind of messaging collaboration tool. So a moment of value perception for Slack may be when we went from all working in offices to working remotely because of COVID. And we had heard of Slack as a communication tool that maybe some of our other coworkers or other companies had worked with. And so we knew that there was a tool that existed out there, and we saw its value, we perceived its value by seeing how it could help us work remotely. The second moment of value is the moment of value realization. And this happened when a user first experiences a product's value and achieves the desired outcome with the product for the first time. For Slack, if you use Slack, this might look like solving an issue using a thread within a project channel, rather than having to walk over to your neighbor's desk, have a conversation with them, make sure that it's documented in email before you can, answer your client or something like that. I also don't have a neighbor at my desk because I work from my kitchen. So there's that, as well as I can realize how much value Slack brings me on my day-to-day because I'm able to communicate with my team members. And the last moment of value is called the moment of value adoption. And so that happens when users start using a product regularly and when they integrate it into their life or workflow. So Slack actually does this in kind of an interesting way. They consider a new client as fully onboarded when that client has sent over 2,000 messages. So it's like the saying that it takes 20-something days to build a habit, right? Once your product is integrated within your users' workflows and their habits, and it provides minimum friction, your user is hooked to using your product. And that's when you kind of just reach the holy grail of PLG. And so as you can see here on the slide, you have value perception to value realization to value adoption, and you need to be doing this at every single stage of your customer's life cycle, right? They need to be seeing this during onboarding, they need to be seeing this during their regular usage of your product, and they need to be seeing this after 1 year, 2 year, 3 years of using this product. So I'm going to be mentioning this quite a lot throughout the rest of this presentation. I just want to make sure that we cover the basics with moment to value. So let's get into product discovery now. When you are conducting a product-led growth discovery, I want you to be asking yourself 2 questions. 1, how might you implement a PLG strategy if you don't already have one? And 2, how might you improve your current PLG strategy? Like for any discovery process, it's important to stay objective throughout your analysis. This means that you need to have external point of views in the room when you're doing your discovery exercises. And I say in the room, but this can be a virtual meeting room as well. I want you to make sure that you're keeping that holistic mindset that I talked about at the beginning. You need to remember that PLG touches on all of your teams. You need marketing, sales, and your customer support team's input just as much, and even if not more, than your product teams. But the most important part of doing a product-led growth discovery will be to talk to your users. That's where your most valuable information will come from. That's always where your most valuable information comes from. The first step that I like to do when I do a PLG discovery is make sure that the client that I'm working with really knows their user personas. You need to make sure that each user persona that you have for your product feels like they're being spoken to in terms of their aha moments, and that you are designing those aha moments specifically for them. Hopefully, if you have a product, if you have a company, you already know who your user personas are, but this might be a good moment to come back to them. Sometimes they like to sit around and collect dust. So yeah, just make sure that you have these really honed down. Just as a reminder, if you don't know what a user persona is, it's a fictional representation of your ideal customer based on market research and real data about your existing users. So by creating your user personas, you're able to gain a deep understanding of your customers, including their pain points, their motivations, their goals, and you're able to tailor your PLG strategy to your users. And that's going to be really, really helpful to making sure that each user feels targeted with that aha moment. Let's take Loom as an example. So there's a screenshot of an email that I got from Loom on the slide. Loom can have many, many different user personas. If you don't know what Loom is, it's a tool that enables you to do screen recordings and video presentations that you can record and share with your teammates or other stakeholders. So 2 examples of a user persona for Loom might be, number 1, the product manager. I apologize if you can hear background noise, the garbage truck is out. So the first one is a product manager. The second one can be an educator. For a product manager, their user persona might be that they need a fast and reliable way to share their ideas and updates with their team. So Loom would help them save time and keep everyone on the same page with its screen recording and video messaging capabilities. Some common use cases of how I use Loom is to describe a bug to my QA or my dev team, share a product roadmap with my clients or other stakeholders. So during my onboarding, Loom actually asked me what my role was, and they've been able to send me targeted email campaigns during my onboarding to get me to see the value of the product. So the screenshot here is a walkthrough of how to use Loom to go over product specs and timelines. Another user persona that you might see is an educator. So a professor or a teacher. And they can use Loom to create engaging and interactive presentations for their students and to communicate their complex ideas effectively. Students can then ask questions and get answers at specific timestamps of the videos as well. So hopefully, what I'm trying to say is that their onboarding flow and their targeted email campaigns hopefully look a lot different from mine. Hopefully they're not getting, Loom emails on how to create a product roadmap, but more about how to create engaging content for their students. So Loom has really honed in on their user personas, and they're able to target them throughout the onboarding process, but also throughout the entire customer lifecycle and the entire customer journey. The next thing that you're going to want to do is talk to people. And that includes doing stakeholder interviews, whether it's for your users, so external stakeholders, or internal stakeholders looking at your teams and different departments, and also doing a whole bunch of data analysis. So what you're really trying to do with this approach is examine the same pillars of PLG, but analyzing them differently. So you want to be looking at user acquisition, user conversion, user retention, and user expansion. That's your basic customer life cycle. You want to be looking at, and identifying where your points of friction are, what's causing PLG not to work, if you already have a PLG strategy implemented. And if you don't have one, where is your opportunity to implement this strategy, right? Where can you optimize things? So your kind of questions and your way of looking at things will be very different. But I want to share some examples of what friction could look like for each of these pillars. So for a user acquisition, what friction could look like, and you'd be surprised at how much this happens. And I want you to go and look on your marketing website right now and see if you have this, is a lot of sites that are leading to people signing up for their products actually don't say that A, their sign up is free, or B, that there's a free trial, or even worse, they end up asking for credit card information during the free trial, which is such a high point of friction. Like, why would you do that when you're trying to get your users to sign up for free, right? So that is very low hanging fruit that you can fix really, really quickly and already have an impact on your PLG strategy. For user conversion, a point of friction might be sending too many emails to get people to sign up for the paid version. That's eventually going to turn off your users. I don't know how many times I sign up for a free product and I get bombarded by emails and I end up unsubscribing and never using their product ever again. While I'm talking about user conversion, something I want to point out is that PLG and doing product-led growth doesn't mean getting rid of your sales team. I could do a whole webinar on this and spend hours talking about this. It's a really interesting topic and a really, really high point of contention to getting buy-in for PLG. Just quickly, PLG doesn't mean doing that. It means redirecting your sales team's talents and skill towards conversion and retention. So be mindful of that as you go through this as well, is you're going to have internal stakeholders that are going to have very different opinions about what PLG means. And that could be a high point of friction as you're exploring this as well, and as you're talking to your internal and external stakeholders. For user retention, a point of friction for a user might be that it's impossible to get a hold of customer support when you need it, either through live chat or through chatbots that are really badly programmed. Your users just aren't able to get the help that they need at the time that they need it. And for upselling, I think we can look at Netflix and whatever they've decided to do right now with making everyone pay for accounts. That becomes self-sabotaging in terms of user expansion, because they need to look at the landscape and look at what other companies are doing as well, right? So again, we could go into a whole discussion, I think, and analyze Netflix's behavior and decision around this. But I want you to remember these 4 pillars as we go into the rest of this presentation. So when you are talking to your external stakeholders and your users, some techniques that you might use to examine these pillars would be doing usability testing, focus groups, and using tools such as Hotjar and Google Analytics to really, really dive into your clients and your users' pain points, motivations, and behaviors. And you want to be examining your customer's entire life cycle through this. And again, you want to be like, the whole point of using users and talking to them is that you're getting data from their point of view rather than subjective data from your internal stakeholders and your internal teams. You know, sales, marketing, and customer support and product will always have such different opinions of what everyone, of what your user might think. So talk to your users first, always. For internal stakeholders, I have some examples of questions that you can ask on the next slide. I know that was something that someone asked me specifically to do content around. But just in terms of tools and techniques to examine these 4 pillars, you can look at reviewing internal reports, whether that's going back through like old town hall slides. You know, you might find some insights around there about PLG, whether your opportunities to implement or opportunities to improve. You can do one-on-one interviews, and you can also do focus group, blue sky sessions, whiteboarding sessions, whatever you want to do. So some questions that you might want to look at for internal stakeholders. The first one is, what are the different parts of your sales pitches for each user persona, and what are the most and least successful parts? You can also twist this question around and use it for your external stakeholders and ask them, you know, during your onboarding, what was something that worked well? What was something that didn't work well, right? Another question is, what does your current onboarding process look like? And how do you define your user onboarding? Like, what does that mean to you and your company currently? How do you define a user as successfully onboarded? I'm going to provide you with a hint. This isn't about being a paying customer. Remember Slack, they don't consider a user as fully onboarded until they sent 2,000 messages, which is a lot, right? What are your pain points for clients trying to onboard themselves? What are blockers, friction points? Again, you might be seeing these come up in different aspects of your discovery, and that's great. You're looking for those friction points. That's what you're looking for. What are your drop-off stats? Which features do prospective or new clients want to try first? That's really going to help you map out your onboarding flow and you know, even the journey that the customer goes through, or the prospective customer goes through, to be able to show them that value perception, that first moment, that first aha moment, and identifying what's the most important to them, because that's going to help you identify how to show them the value. What does your lifecycle look like for all user personas? Again, it's going to be very different, for example, for Loom, for a product manager than for a teacher, right? So you want to be sure that you're taking into account all your high priority user personas. You want to be looking at things like your retention rate, churn, upsells, and then last but not least, and you know, these are just examples. You can go a lot deeper into your questions, but these should cover your basics. Which of your teams is going to own people that self-sign up, right? Because we can't just say, okay, now that I have PLG, or now that my process improved, people are just going to sign up themselves, and they're going to be able to onboard themselves and use the product and be forever happy. We still need ownership of people who are going to monitor those users and provide support and help them feel like they're seen and being talked to, and that they're seeing their value, right? So that's it for your interviews and your kind of first step of data analysis. I'm going to talk about product teardowns now. Product teardowns are my favorite parts of doing discoveries. So what a product teardown is it's completing an in-depth analysis of your company's marketing website and products and the following processes: your sign-up process, your onboarding process, upgrading to a paid user, and one thing that's missing from the slide is literally everything that's in between, right? Of just being a user and being an active client. So you're going to start with your marketing site teardown. And literally what I do when I do this is I use a tool like Doppler, and I just take screenshots of everything. I put it in the whiteboarding tool that we use at Crowdlinker, which is FigJam. And I write Post-it notes, I make arrows, I write comments, and I literally just do a brain dump of all of my thoughts and look at the following aspects in terms of marketing website and the marketing process. For marketing website, I'm going to ask myself, how does the site guide users to the self sign up? Does your marketing website make it easy for product qualified leads to self-qualify? Does the content on your website lead to a quick aha moment? And do your users quickly understand how this product can help them? I'm also going to look at your marketing process. What marketing initiatives beyond your marketing websites do you have in place to create your PQL funnel? Do you have a sales bot, chatbot on your website? What do your onboarding campaigns look like in terms of emails? So I'll actually sign up and go through all of those stages to see where there are friction points and where there are opportunities for you to improve this. I'm going to then look at your self-sign-up process, right? How easy is it for a user to sign up themselves and create an account? And that's what I was talking about, where I might see, ooh, free trial, and I click the button, and then the first thing that they ask me is for my credit card info. I don't want to provide that if I'm doing a 3-day free trial. There's no way, right? So really looking at what sort of friction there is that might prevent users from creating an account. I'm then going to go through the onboarding process. And so I like to separate sign up from onboarding. Sign up, I really consider just as what's your email address, what's your password. That's it. That's all you need to be able to sign up. Your onboarding is how you're going to be able to learn how to use the product and become a fully integrated user and be able to integrate the product within your workflows. So I'm going to be looking at, points of frictions around learning how to use the platform for your products and onboarding myself. Looking at how quickly will I be thinking, oh, wow, this product is easy to use. How easy is it for me to use it every day or every week or every month, depending on the type of product, right? Which features would prospective and new clients want to try out first? And how is your user educated? Do you have product tours? Do you have product onboarding checklists? Do you have chatbots? Do you have content for me that I can kind of self-navigate really easily and teach myself how to use your product? The next aspect that I'm going to look at is becoming a paid user. So once, let's say you have a 14-day free trial, what do the upgrade paths look like? Where are your upgrade buttons? And what type of friction is preventing me from wanting to become a paid user, right? You're asking people to make a commitment with their money and with their resources. You have to make it as seamless as possible. And then the last thing I'm going to look at is how do you retain your PLG users? What do your touch points look like throughout the entire process? Are you still sending emails and engagement campaigns? We don't use Jira at Crowdlinker. We use Shortcut, which kind of does the same thing. But every month I get an invitation to a webinar where they do, for example, release notes, and they show how to use the new features. And that's a great way of retaining your users, right? Is continuing to produce content that's going to engage them. And then I know someone asked a question around this, and it's around looking at how do you increase your monthly average users as well, right? What are your touch points with them? And are your touch points with them specific to those user personas or generic? Going back to Shortcut, our ticket management system for product builds or marketing site builds, I get emails to webinar invitations specifically for product and project managers. What someone who's in the engineering team might be a bit different with how they manage their tickets or something like that, right? So you want to make sure, again, that you're really just showing all of your users their value and the value that they're looking for and making it as personable as possible. So this might seem like a lot of work, and it is, but it's really helpful and it's necessary before you move on to the next step. So your next step is actually going to be doing the same thing, but for your competitors. So when you're looking at your competitors, I want you to ask yourself 2 important questions. right? What are your competitors doing well in the PLG space? And what are they not doing well in the PLG space that is causing them to lose users? This is really important, especially if you're just getting started in PLG, because as I said with the stats at the beginning, most companies are starting to do PLG. So you want to make sure that you're riding that wave with them. At this point, it takes time to see PLG results. So you want to be on this today, if not yesterday, right? So really looking at companies in your space and finding the ones that are doing PLG and seeing what friction do they cause, what are your opportunities, and what are they doing well. So how are you going to get there? In order to draw any type of conclusions, you're going to need to examine the following. Who are your main competitors? I said that already. Who's their target market? Who are the users? And do they have similar user personas as you? This is really important because let's say, Loom has their user personas that they segment, and you can look at them through their marketing website, and it's solution-based, right? They talk to those people and they make you feel like they're going to solve your own specific problems. There might be a gap with your competitors where they're solving other type of user personas problems as from your user persona. So there might be an opportunity there for you. What features do they prioritize on the website? How do they sell themselves? And what do they highlight and prioritize as their key features? And how are they differentiating themselves from other companies in the space? Once you've done that, you can start going through the product teardown process. So the process I outlined on the slide before. And you're going to want to be mapping out their user flows for the entire journey. Don't forget to include marketing and customer support. Again, PLG is not just about the product, right? And you're going to be looking for what works well, what's not working at all, and what are their friction points. Now, when I do this, I usually build a list of maybe a dozen competitors, and then I rank them by who are the most direct, and then I'll do the first top 2 or top 3 competitors, depending on how much time I have and how complex their product is, to be able to gather data and compare it to the client that I'm working with. Just don't do this before you do your own product teardowns, because you're going to mix everything up and you're already going to be biased by what your competitors are doing, which is not going to help you look at yourselves objectively. And so the last thing I want to talk about in terms of discovery is looking at metrics. And I know someone specifically asked about metrics, so this is your cue to listen back in if you zoned that. That's all good. So the key with anything strategy-wise is to always be measuring your improvements or measuring how you're doing to see how you can improve, right? The key to setting metrics, and this slide says setting metrics before experimenting. This is really about trying to backtrack and see if you already have metrics that you can use to measure your PLG progress if you're just starting out, or if you already have PLG and you're trying to improve, make sure that you're tracking the metrics I'm going to talk about. Something that's really important with metrics for PLG is a lot of people think that you're going to be able to measure your success just by looking at your lifetime value and your cost of acquisition, and that's going to determine the success of your PLG strategy. If you do that though, you're mixing everything up. You're not looking at specific metrics individually, and you're not going to be able to see exactly where things are not going well and can be improved, what things you're doing really, really, really well. So let's get into it. You're going to want to look at acquisition metrics. So those metrics might be time to sign up. So how long does it take from a user landing on your site to a user signing up? The increased number of started sign-up processes. Pay attention to the fact that I don't say completing the full sign-up process. I'm really looking at just the top of that funnel. And then talking about funnel, look at your PQL funnel, your product qualified leads funnel. I could do an hour-long webinar about the product qualified leads funnel, but I'm just going to leave it at this for now and say a little bit more high level on this. Once you have your acquisition metrics, you're going to want to look at your activation metrics. So look at your sign-up flow completion rate, look at your onboarding flow completion rate, and break that down by feature if you're onboarding for several features. Look at your feature setup completion rate. So how long, for example, if I'm onboarding to Slack, how long is it taking me as a user to set up my first project channel, for example? And then your product tour completion rate. Are people actually completing your product tours, or are they just clicking on skip? They just want to explore the platform themselves, right? So making everything as streamlined as possible for your activation. You're then going to look at your revenue metrics. So looking at your conversion rate to paying user and your average revenue per user as well. I know someone specifically asked about this as well. So to increase your ARPU, what you want to do is be looking at, again, are you really delivering value to all of your users the way that they want value to be delivered to them, right? So my value as a PM, as a user of Loom is very different to what the value that an educator might be seeking. So again, it all comes down to showing the value. Look at your retention metrics, look at churn. You can look at churn for non-PLG clients. So clients are still going to be going through that traditional sales cycle, but also look at your churn for your PLG clients, right? So separate those out. And then you can look at also at support requests from clients, again, separating out your PLG clients from your non-PLG clients and tracking that over time. And then the last thing you're going to want to look at is your referral metrics. Try to measure your network effect, right? So everything that's on the slide, again, I could do an hour-long webinar about each of these, but you might want to break them up into something that works better for you, right? So your metrics will depend on your context. Some of these may be applicable, some of these may not. You may choose to segment these further. But one thing I do want to stress is that PLG success does not happen overnight, right? Seeing results requires patience. So you're not going to see results month after month. You're going to be seeing results quarterly or yearly. So yeah, again, try to see and find as much metrics, historical metrics as you can during your discovery process. That's going to help you. And then make sure that you're setting up ways to measure these metrics as you close up your discovery and as you move on to your next steps, so you can measure progress. And then you can go back through that discovery cycle again every year or so to make sure that you're still optimizing everything. So that kind of concludes the discovery portion of this. So when you're wrapping up your discovery, make sure that you're summarizing all your findings, make sure that your success metrics, that they're smart, they're specific, realistic, achievable, and time-bound. And then you can create your problem statements that will help you determine your next steps. Your next steps after discovery will be wildly different for you than it might be for other companies, right? Next steps could look like mapping out your ideal flows for your top user personas, getting user feedback on them. Could be moving on to design if you're needing to do some design work before you go and implement some changes. But it could also be, oh wow, okay, we're not built on the tech to support PLG yet. Or we need to rework our product or our service offering because it's too complicated and we offer too many variations of our products. We have too many different packages that clients can subscribe to. We need to just simplify everything. Do you need to go back and implement some of those metrics and their tracking to be able to measure your success and measure improvement or measure where you're still falling short on PLG? And maybe you're going to come to the conclusion from your competitive analysis that PLG is just not the answer for your industry yet. Maybe your industry is not ready for it, and that's okay. Now you know how to do the process, go back and do it in a little bit of time, right? So something I want to stress and something that we always talk about at Crowdlinker is that discovery is a continuous process. You always need to be looking at this kind of stuff so that you can always keep on improving your product. Before I hand it back over to Aram, so like I said, this is a very high-level overview of how to do a discovery. At Crowdlinker, we always want to be putting up content for people that are interested in product-led growth. So there's a list here of potential topics that we were kind of thinking about that we could go deeper into with more webinars or white papers or blog articles or anything like that. So if any of those are of interest to you, feel free to mention it in the comments or send us an email asking for more information and we'll try to put something together for you. That closes kind of my part of the presentation and of this webinar. So Aram, I'll hand it back over to you to go through some Q&A.
Awesome. Clem, great job. Thank you so much for running that. I really appreciate it. So yeah, as I said in the chat, sorry, that was me typing. Now's the time for Q&A. Feel free to use the Q&A component in Zoom to ask your questions. I don't have any questions from anybody. I don't know if that's a good or bad sign. I guess you answered everything for us today, Clem. But if anybody, sorry, could you put that back up? Clem,
Oh,
of the
yeah,
screen share?
sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A section, wherever we could answer them. Happy to explore them with you right now. We have a bit of time. We also do have some office hours available. You could scan the QR code that's presented on the screen, or you click on the link, which you can't right now maybe, but we'll send it out to you in the deck anyway after, so you should be able to get access to it. The office hours will be run by myself or with Clem joining to go through any of your questions. So thanks again. Okay, I got a question here from Tudor. So his question is, could you briefly describe how PLG would help in the case of complex B2B sales processes, or two, complex products like analytics and AI? Good question. Let me take a stab at that one. So complex B2B sales processes. So I'm not quite sure what you mean there, Tudor, in terms of like how much time it takes to, from a sales standpoint, to close a B2B offering. But if that's the case, I'm assuming in that scenario, you're a very sales-led company in the sense that you go through a demo, there's a salesperson that's involved or an account manager who does the onboarding, etc. So PLG can definitely help solve this. You just have to really understand exactly what is the manual process, what is all the salespeople doing, what kind of questions are they asking, what are the things that the account manager or whoever, or the customer success manager is doing in your organization manually, like understanding what the steps that they take, and then try to figure out a way, in my opinion, is like, how do you automate a lot of these things? How and when do you present these through a proper contextual user flow onboarding journey? Or when is the right time to send the right prompt or the right email in order for them to continue kind of where they left off? Maybe it requires just like a really solid knowledge and resource hub area, which has tons of content and material on how to do everything that you could need in the early stages of a user's onboarding. There's many different kind of ways to overcome that, but from the examples we've seen, also with companies that are very sales-led, like they have a very sales-led culture, it requires, in my opinion, a big cultural and leadership mindset change. As Clem mentioned earlier, you got to really leverage your sales team to do other functions. And with PLG, you need to have that ability to also have a lot of inbound traffic that's coming in order to really benefit from the from product-led growth. With complex products like analytics and AI, I would say it's kind of similar. Like, if it requires somebody to be able to install something, or something that requires them to upload some sort of information, again, those are all different prompts that you could present to the user at the right times in order for them to complete that specific, job, or that requirement for them to continue.
To add to that, what I would look into, Tudor, is something called contextual onboarding. There's a lot of documentation around it. And it's really making sure that, if you're doing analytics and AI, if you're targeting a data engineer or someone who's actually using the tool, their onboarding flow and what you're going to be prompting them with will be wildly different from someone who's doing the implementation of whatever software you're talking about. So again, making sure that everything is super, super targeted to your users' needs, especially if it's a very complex product. Sorry, Rob.
No, that's great. The next one we have is Andreas's. So his question is, what is one critical, expensive mistake oversight companies' product managers make when approaching PLG? Good question. Clem, you want to try to take that one?
Yeah. What's one critical, expensive mistake oversight companies make? I think there's a lot of things that could go wrong. The one that I talked about it, but it always really surprises me the amount and it's mind-blowing, really. The amount of companies that will say sign up for a free trial or sign up, they don't say it's free, and then they ask for a credit card number. Like you're just shutting up your funnel right from the top if you're doing that. There's one competitor for a client that I looked at that had a 3-day free trial, and then you would get charged $200, and you couldn't sign up unless you put in your credit card. Like that's just nuts. That's not how it's done these days. You can't be doing that. So it's really, if you're looking at your product qualified leads, it's really trying to keep the top of the funnel as open as possible and not closing that. And product qualified leads are something that we could talk about forever as well, but it's really just making sure that you are directing everyone down that funnel. Something else is customer support as well. That's really, really downplayed, and having excellent customer support through whether it's chatbots or doing something where you can contact people. With Intercom, which is a tool that I used to use quite a lot, which is a complex kind of customer support tool, you can actually record looms and put that in the chat with the like customer support agent, where they're able to look at those and answer you. So it's about not getting on the phone. It's about being able to do it at your own pace in your own time as a user, and just making sure that you are driving value for all of your users. Sorry, that was a bit of a convoluted answer, Andreas, but I hope that addressed your question.
Yeah, I would just, thanks, Clem. That was great. I would just add to it. I think one of the challenges, especially when it comes to B2B buyers, a lot of them, I think it was in the presentation that they would like to be able to do a self-serve demo or like a self-serve onboarding, right, of a product. So what I'm trying to say is that removing as much friction as possible for people to be able to see the value add of what the platform, the marketplace, the solution offers, on the marketing website or before sign up is super, super critical for people to understand, how things work. So like if you have, say, a marketplace, being able to browse a directory or, look at the options that are already available in terms of what you could do on the marketplace, that gives people a bit of like a way in to see, what's out there before having to sign up and become a user in order to have access to that. So again, that's like very case specific, but like it really depends on your business and what kind of offering you have. But just think about the less friction, in terms of your product presentation, the better. Awesome. Any other questions from anybody? I think that was our last one for today. So let me just mark this as done. And done. Awesome. Cool. Hopefully you guys found this really useful and beneficial. I'm really keen to know, I think Alexa wrote all the above in terms of next topics to do a webinar around. We'll follow up with each of you and just ask, what was the things that you learned that you didn't know before joining this webinar, and what are the things that you want to continue learning, so we could go and work on that material so that it can benefit you. But thanks everybody for your time joining us today. As I said, this will be available once we've cleaned up the video. You could reach out to us by different social networks, by the phone number here, by email, or on our website. We really look forward to connecting with each and one of you, and hopefully helping you out with your own PLG process in your business. So we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of the day.
Everyone, thank you.
Thank you, Clem. Take care.